Hello, Lucky World. Welcome to the show. I'm still getting over my little bit of a cold, but no big deal. And the wrath of Gritty from yesterday. But besides that, we'll talk about that later. Russ, what do you got going on here?
So today, Christopher Mad Dog Russo was on ESPN, and it was a fun thing to see because I'm like a sports talk radio junkie. So I go way back. I go back to Art Rush Jr., who really was there before before FAN or before really any station on the East Coast. He was on like WABC, and I don't know how I found him, but one night I'm listening, and there's these fans arguing with him about games and stuff. And as you know, I like a good argument. So I've been listening to sports talk radio on and off for all these years. And it's funny because, Mike and the Mad Dog was probably the most popular show in the history of that medium. And Mike's been retired for at least 2-3 years now.
He was retired even before he retired.
I know. But I have to give Russo credit. He was on that show, and he was as sharp as he could be. He really gave Stephen A. Smith all he could handle on some of these debates. It got more baseball onto that show, which will at least make me watch it at least every time that Russo's on now. But the one thing they left out, and there's always this blind spot, it was always on FAN, and the blind spot was always on ESPN. And when they made a list and they were talking about great LA teams and titles and everything, never a mention about the Kings. Matter of fact, the USC Trojans got mentioned and the Kings didn't. And it always frustrates me. And again, Stephen A. Smith started off the year. I saw one episode where he did talk hockey, like before the season started. They probably made him do it. And so he did it. And they really haven't talked hockey since any time that I've tuned in. And this was their opportunity. Like, this was like, you're talking about LA, you're talking about titles, you're talking about some popularity, and it didn't happen. So even for those people that thought, hey, hockey's on ESPN now, it's going to get on all the shows, it's not.
You're muted. Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind, especially I know Stephen A. Smith talked about hockey previously, but, they're going to focus on the Dodgers, or they're going to focus on, the Lakers, the Magic, Kareem Lakers, or Kobe and Shaq Lakers.
They were talking current. They were talking last few years. And and the Kings are not that far removed from championships. Right. And again, USC got more discussion than the Kings.
Yeah, that's a travesty. But I'm not shocked.
No, it's very true.
I saw this is not hockey related, so it probably fits in the pre-show here. But they mention it every NFL game that Matthew Stafford plays, but the Kershaw Stafford connection. They played football and baseball together. Stafford was his catcher, and I think Kershaw was a wide receiver for Stafford, as I recall, in high school. But I had never seen a photo of those two when they were played Little League together.
No, me neither.
To see those two guys standing side by side and thinking about that, I know there have been others because I've heard them through it, but I wonder what. What are the other combinations of guys that, played together when they were kids? I know Gary Giola and Yogi Berra played together. That's a famous
one. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm sure there were others too
I'm sure Tom Glavine played with some NHL players wherever he played.
Oh, he did for sure.
Yeah.
For sure he did. Yeah.
So
I'm sure Chris Drury did too when he was in the Little League World Series. I'm sure there's somebody that he
I don't know, though. I think we would have heard that if there was somebody on his team. You know what I mean?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
So, that's the hard thing. I mean, you play in the same league. That's a little bit different story than when you're on the same team or the same.
If you went college is a lot easier. Definitely happened a lot at college.
Yeah.
Bo Jackson or Deion Sanders.
I could tell you just from interviewing Terry Funk, a lot of wrestlers were on like the North Texas State football team. A lot of them at the same time. A lot of them that you knew from the 60s and 70s, like Dusty Rhodes, guys like that were all there on it.
Mulligan.
Yeah, they were playing football like before they went into wrestling. So yeah, but Little League's hard. That's a hard one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. All right, here we go, guys. Let's do it. Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, February 16th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'd like to find out what Brendan Lemieux said to Evander Kane last night.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And first, I think we have to talk a little bit about the Olympics.
Yes.
Because we have, a couple teams eliminated today.
Well, okay, I'll start it off here because I stayed up. I drifted off at times, but I stayed up for most of the U.S.-Slovakia game.
Yep.
And unfortunately, and Russ, you can talk to this, and Kevin as well. I mean, obviously the U.S. were heavily favored in the sense that they were 3-0 going in, and they were the number one ranked team, I guess, in the tournament at that point. They had a tough time breaking through against Rybar, the Slovakian goaltender. They had a 2-1 lead when I was conscious late in the third period. Russ, you had a problem with the lineup that David Quinn put out late in regulation.
I did. I didn't care as much about the goaltending thing. I was curious. I'm like, why is Camesso not in? But whatever.
Yeah.
Straussman played fine. I'm not going to blame him for anything. But at the end of the game, when you're getting towards your last couple shifts and you have the lead, and you know that Slafkovsky and Marek Rivik, who people remember him from the Rangers, he played in the NHL. There's a 6'4" guy and a 6'2" guy, and you're putting Aaron Ness and Ben Meyer against them, and they're 5'10" and 5'11", and there's other guys on the ice too, but those guys are going to the net. You're down by a goal. You already gave up a goal to Slafkovsky because you let him walk in the crease, and you should have every big player on your team that has a chance of penalty killing there, knowing these guys are going to go to the net, and they went to the net against the two smallest guys. It just seemed dumb.
The U.S. had that game in control, and then Slovakia ties it with 44 seconds left in regulation. And we'll talk about the overtime and the shootout in a minute. But of what I saw, it wasn't a dominant performance, but because Slovakia stayed in the game and staying within a goal and then scoring a goal with less than a minute. I mean, it is a tenuous situation.
Well, I mean, Slovakia has a history of biting people in international tournaments. It's easy to overlook them because they're not among the big heavyweights. I know U.S.'s record is that they've been beaten by them before, and there's not. These players are all good players. They're pro players and they're good prospects, but they're still not America's best, and there's a lot of indecision. And to be honest, as we talked about before the show, I had been following the betting line, and I've learned since I left USA Today and started writing in the betting world for a while that those guys really kind of know what they're doing. And they had going into the tournament that neither Canada nor US was going to be a factor.
Right.
They had Finland, they have Russia as an overwhelming favorite. Finland and Sweden were the teams that they, were the betting favorites, and that's where they are. And the other thing that's in play here is, we're used to really seeing, the best teams sort of prevail because we see 7-game series in NHL, and now we have this, single elimination. And I said to Mike before the show, and I really believe this, I think there's more pressure in the quarterfinal than anyone, because if you win that game, you're going to play for a medal of some color.
Yeah.
And if you lose that game, you've had a terrible tournament.
Right, because you got nothing.
Yeah, you got nothing. You're not even get a shot at it. And usually, you get beat by a team that maybe you should beat. And it happens. It almost feels like in every 4 quarterfinals at the Olympics, there are always 2 upsets.
The U.S. The U.S. did a Sweden in the World Juniors. They won all the games in the round robin, and then they lose in the quarterfinals, which is what Sweden does almost every time. But Russ, the thing I watched most of the overtime, and Beniers was, I think, the best player for the U.S. He had a couple really good scoring chances, almost ended it.
I thought Brisson was really good too, though.
Yeah, Brisson was really good.
Brisson was good, but I thought Beniers was the best, and then. Puzzlingly, David Quinn doesn't use him as one of the
I
five.
know.
shooters.
Matty
That's what
Beniers
everybody's pointing out. That's what
is
everybody's
terrific in the shootout. There really was no good reason to not use him. I get your captain's Andy Mealy, but listen, at the end of the day, you've got to go with your most talented guys when you can't solve a goalie late in a game. And Andy Mealy's not going to be that guy. You've got to go with the guy that has more moves, that has better reflexes.
Yeah.
You got to at least try with Beniers. But I didn't even
I
kill
don't
him for
get it.
that. I killed him for just, like I said, deployment for that last shift, because we wouldn't have even gotten to that point. But, if we switch to Canada, I mean, I said I used the word crap on another show, but that Canadian roster was not good.
That is probably one of the.
It was a bad Canadian
It
roster.
was crazy when you think about like the players who had major roles on that team.
I know, it's just nuts.
Like, so and that can't that are out of the NHL. Like, at least the U.S. went young. At least the U.S.
mostly young. Yes,
they had a lot of 19-year-olds. They had a lot of But I mean, nothing against Jordan Wheel. But he's an okay player. And then the other ex-Flyer that was with him on the line, can't think.
I forget who's on the line.
But there's another Canadian. There's another team on Team Canada who was with him on the line that was from the Flyers too. That have been. Gordon Knight. Gordon Knight. Okay.
Yeah, Corbin Knight. Yeah.
Corbin Knight. Yeah. So those two guys. I mean, those guys were like the top line on Canada when they would list the depth charts. And I'm thinking to myself, that's just an insane level of drop off from. I mean, the drop off is one thing to drop off from the. Sorry about this, the dog.
Let me give you an indication
for a second.
The breakdown here. Owen Power led Team Canada with playing almost 25 minutes. Guess who was number 2? Maxime Nero.
Wow.
Okay. All the guys over.
You know what it proves? If you give coaches a chance, they will always rely on veterans rather than young players on a first time in a big tournament like this. They're just always going to do that knee-jerk reaction of go to the veterans, unless you're a team like Slovakia who, hey, they've got a stud kid who is going to go really high in the draft, and he's their best player. So,
and they got Martin Marincin, Russ.
I know, but you know what I mean? Like, and Kevin knows this. Most of the time, these coaches will default to the players that they know, that they brought over, and this is what happens.
Yeah, and they've got limited practices, so they don't have they're going on history, and that's why in the shootout, Mike and I had talked about this before we came on the air. Generally they have in all the practices, they end every practice with a shootout, tournament. So they have a idea of who's, got moves and who doesn't and all that kind of stuff. And my guess is, the players that they had out were the guys that did well in those shootout tournaments, because they don't have much to go on. So they just kind of do it on instincts.
Although I watched Torch use Ole Jokinen over Marian Gaborik to decide an NHL season, so that's not always the case, Kev.
No, but I mean sometimes guys just follow their instincts. They're the coach. Yes. They're in charge. They got to make a decision. And there have been plenty of things that have left us scratching our heads, and the guys have scored too.
Well,
so
I'll just say this: for a team that was challenged to score. Canada and Claude Julien plays Mason McTavish 14 minutes, plays Eric Stahl almost 19 minutes, and plays Josh Hosang, who had a couple assists. He played him 9.
Yeah, that Claude Julien really that's a case where he wants everybody to play ridiculously safe hockey, and that team, that was one of the most boring hockey games I've ever watched, period. I mean, it was literally background in my house because it was just nothing.
Yep.
It was, and it wasn't good nothing hockey. It was mediocre nothing hockey.
No.
And I think Julien just, you should have gone and used Hosang a little more. And McTavish looked great. McTavish should have played more than Eric Stahl. I get Eric Stahl is your name from the past.
Sure.
But when they were interviewing Eric Stahl, like second period, he was still really catching his breath. Like this was a eye-opening tournament, I'm sure, for Eric Stahl, because now he's going to stay retired.
Now, Kev, I know that these players, young or old, are going there for the Olympic experience, and most of them are saying, "I'm going, and I'm not going based on if I'm going to play or not, but I'm going for that experience and for the chance to win a medal." But Hockey Canada went to the wall to get Devin Levi to play to be one of the 3 goaltenders who's having a fantastic year for Northeastern. They basically recruited him and said, come. And he does not play 1 minute. They play Matt Tompkins and Eddie Pasquale. If I was Devin Levi, I would go to the head of Hockey Canada and tell him to F off, really. Because you went halfway across the world to not play.
Yeah.
He should have played a game. He should have played a game.
Yeah, probably. I think when you only have 3 preliminary games too, I mean, I don't know. I like to me, you shouldn't go over there if you're not prepared to accept kind of what it may or may not happen.
That's true. But then you get the sense that the Canada coach, why can't I? I'm sorry. Someone just ran over my mailbox outside.
Oh, I was going to just say this, Ek.
Sorry. So just 1 second, Russ. Someone outside just backed over our mailbox and took off. So that was what the dog was freaking out about.
Okay.
So our mailbox is just flattened in the yard.
Oh, that's nice. Great neighbor.
Just bringing that up. That's what happened. So.
Wow. No, the only thing I was going to say is, like, if I'm Devin Levi, I do kind of think I'm going to play a game. Like, Pat Nagel is a 34-year-old goalie who plays for the Phantoms, right? Even I was joking when he got picked. He's the chaperone of this team. Like, I'm sure he knew he was never going to play. And that's fine. He was probably happy to be there and be chosen because he's had this like comeback year in the AHL and maybe it keeps his career going. But with Levi, I'm kind of like with Mike. I'm like, I don't know if I want to play for you guys again.
That's a big thing to take him out. I mean, because last minute thing, as it all was, and to be fair to everybody, that's what it was, right? It was last minute, but it was last minute for all the big powerhouses, right? So,
but was Pasquale the guy that's going to help you in the future, or is Devin Levi maybe the guy that's going to help you in the future?
I honestly like Pasquale, and the thing about this thing, I thought going into this tournament, I'm like, Pasquale, who was like the goaltender of the year in the KHL last year, this was a chance to like get himself onto like the Edmonton Oilers or something like that. Like I thought if he goes in there and does something is impressive. I mean,
listen, it's not that far fetched, Mike.
No, the goalie of the year in the KHL is a good goalie. I mean,
it is. They are.
And so Pasquale is a half decent.
Listen,
goalie.
Rebar is a KHL goalie, and he beat the U.S. team.
Yeah, he gets in there.
I saw Eddie Pasquale a couple years ago playing for the Syracuse Crunch, and he played in the playoffs, but he was their second or third best goaltender. So, if he's going to take us, plus,
but after the draft, like he was a legit prospect for a while.
Yeah, and he did. And
he's 31.
Going in here in the KHL is worthy of an NHL look. To me, that's like something that's okay. But
we're kind of analyzing these tournaments from a long way away, and they're there and they know what's going on in practice. And
that's for sure. Do we know what uniforms the women are going to wear tonight? Which ones? Do we have any idea?
I don't know, but I'm sure they're not wearing that dark black where you can't read anything.
Can I show you something that really pissed me off more than anything else? And this is something I know this doesn't matter, but I think it's pretty crazy. So
well, let me just say this though while you're pulling whatever you're going to pull up back. The game of the Olympic tournament is tonight. Even if Canada and the U.S. advance to the gold medal in men's, most people are looking forward to this game more than anything else.
Yeah, I had many people tell me this was the game that mattered over anything else in the entire Olympics, even. But these are hockey people that I know. I'm sure there's figure skating that's more important, and of course now what's going on with that we know. But at the end of the day, this was like a game to look forward to, and this game will be big ratings. I'm hoping to win a bet in this game. Otherwise, I'm going to have a bad picture show up on Instagram one day. But I'm going to win this bet, damn it. And the U.S. are going to win.
The one thing that worries me is, these teams are so close that everything matters. And the injury to Decker, which I thought was going to be significant when I watched the last game, I've seen them play a lot. I covered the last World Championship. They were missing something, and I know who they were missing. That last game, and they still got they can still have really terrific players, but there's a lot of terrific players on both teams. So when you take one player who is such a a speedster and just everything about her, take her out of lineup, that's significant.
It's a big deal. I mean, Abby Rock has done a nice job, but it's not the same. And she scored a goal, but I get it. And at the end of the day, though, Cavallini, I mean, she made that one leg save, Kev, where maybe she's the hot goalie now. You have to kind of hope
I'm
that.
super impressed with her.
Well, and the other, but that's the negative. But the positive I take from the American perspective is they had a lot more shots. Their goalie, they ran into a hot goalie. Like hot goalie beat them.
And they've been out shooting everybody
right.
by like 3-1, even Canada. So you got to believe that at some point, some of these will go in. They have been getting a lot of posts.
Yeah.
I still have faith in them. I do. But I think it's more about the U.S.'s defense because we know Canada, how good they are offensively. They're going to have to limit shots and play really hard on defense. They are.
Well, going into this tournament, I talked to somebody who knows the women's game, and he said the difference between the U.S. and Canada's U.S. gets a lot of shots, but there are a lot of shots that are savable, and Canada gets fewer shots, but there's shots, the quality shots that are very difficult to stop. So, and that turned out to be true in the last game. So,
I've been impressed with Capellini's glove hand a lot. Like she really has. She definitely has an incredible glove hand. Like out of all the women goalies I've watched over the years, just in general, just she catches everything that's within realm. And she controls the tempo of the game that way, which is really important against Canada. Because Canada, and all hockey teams feed off of momentum. So it's like the idea of that she can slow the game down by catching the puck a lot and stopping it, which is what she does. That's going to help, I think, tonight.
She's great. Some of the youngsters like Cameron Easy has really done well. Some of the younger players, Alex Carpenter is a really interesting one because last summer I didn't even know what had happened to her after she wasn't picked to be on the big team. And I get emails from the KHL, and I got an email from the KHL saying, hey, Alex Carpenter was the MVP of their league. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I know who Alex. So I put that up on the website, and she is now back on this team. And for the most part, she's been hot for the entire tournament, except for maybe last game. I think she's the X factor, Kev. I think she's the one where she could make up for Decker because she does have a high scoring caliber. And when she was hot early, they played their best hockey.
Yeah, she played well, I thought, in the games that I've seen him play.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I was going to bring up before I was so rudely interrupted by Mike was
that's never happened on this show ever.
No, I know, which is losing some of its momentum now, is the fact that we are looking at two teams in Canada and the USA who have two of the most historically incredible Olympic / just country jerseys there are. Like Team Canada's old red one with the big white, the Paul Henderson one with the big white is phenomenal, right? We know that one. That's amazing. Team USA's, classic like collegiate type Miracle on Ice, USA logo stitched across, just great, just great stuff. And yet, in this tournament, we were watching like two hideous jerseys play against each other in that Canada-US men's game. You
mean the Canada black jersey?
It was the Canada red jersey with the black numbers, which is the black numbers are totally indiscernible.
It's brutal. Yeah.
The American white jerseys with like the Montreal Canadian type slow thing across the middle. And then USA in like a Microsoft font from 1996, and then and the back of those jerseys, the numbers being half on the blue stripe that goes across and half on white, like white numbers on white versus black numbers on red. I honestly don't know how the announcers are doing it, like how they're calling the games.
No, it's hard. It's hard.
I noticed when I was watching that game, I forget who was the actual play-by-play guy.
Kenny Albert.
Right. The Canada game was about the Canada game. Was how impressed I was by him because he Albert. You could tell that he didn't often say the players' names very much in that game. And I'm thinking to myself, how could you? There's a different way of announcing. And he was just basically announcing the play that was happening, but there was a lot of silent breaks. If you're listening on the radio, there's no way. Like you would have any idea what the hell was going on.
Yeah, I don't even care about the uniforms.
But how can we not
win the damn game? I don't care. It'll be the greatest looking uniform I've ever seen in my life if they win. I don't care.
No, but I mean, Team Sweden understands that they got it right? They have a beautiful.
How many options? I don't even know how many different Team Swedens are there. Like
it's
3?
Yellow with
There's not that many differentiations.
It's right. They got it right. It's great. It's a fantastic classic uniform. Like when I went to see the game in 2010 when I was at the Olympics, I was just psyched to see a team with those uniforms.
Like
playing.
Finland, does Finland even have an alternative one? I don't think so.
What this is proving is that I was right to interrupt you, Ak.
No. I know other people out there agree with me. If you agree with me, please comment and tell Mike how wrong he is.
Don't worry.
It's disgraceful.
Uniforms are important. I know they are because people really get upset over them.
I'm making a small deal of this, but if you're a player who's over there pulling that jersey over your head, that matters to you a lot, you know. And it's like, and if that jersey sucks, it's like if it just looks terrible, it versus the jersey that you know that team has in their drawer. You know, they have these great jerseys that they once used. What's the point of this? It's just
well, maybe that's why Dave Tiger Williams beat the crap out of everybody when he had that ugly jersey on for Vancouver. That might be the reason.
I'm just saying.
Chester uniform?
It doesn't matter in the game, but it does matter when you're watching it. Watching it is very annoying because I had first of all, with USA and Canada, you didn't know what number who these players were anyway. And you're sitting there trying to figure this out. It was very annoying. I mean, it was like.
The one thing I did want to bring up, though, and it just slays me, but you know, I've covered women's hockey since it debuted at the Olympics since in 1998, and you know, America was behind that push. Walter Bush really that was one of the great ironies of the justifiable work that the women had to do in order to get more pay. The irony of that, of course, is that there would be no women's hockey if not for USA Hockey, and they were drawing the line on salary. So I kind of thought about that. But I saw an interview recently with Hillary Knight, who was asked about the fact that we haven't made strides. I mean, I guess, you know, that's not fair. I mean, there's been some strides, but it's still just two teams. You know, that's, you know, you can't debate that. And she just basically said, you know, it's just marketing. Like, we got to bottle up what we do here. But the problem is that's just not true. You cannot recreate the nationalistic pride that we have in the Olympic competition. Even at the World Championships, it's not the same. And it's so big here. People really get into it. You know, like it was brought up, people really want to watch that game tonight. But that's it. It's a one-off. And it's a shame. And I thought, you know, well, maybe there's a comparison to the WNBA. So I went and looked up the attendance of the WNBA. Oh, my gosh. Like, what do you think the WNBA draws these days?
About 2,500.
2,000.
Yeah. That's insane. I mean, like, big arenas.
And they have been, like, the NBA has worked hard with the WNBA. And they've got stars. They got recognized names that we all know. And they're still, like, they get, you know, the team in Arizona, which is, you know, has Taurasi. It's a name, a team that we know very well. They only average 5,000.
You know what, Kev, is really interesting. There's two different points kind of there at the same time. The one point is, okay, why aren't there better women hockey players in the rest of the world? You know, and one of my thoughts on that is absolutely economical, right? Like, there's no question.
Oh, there's economics, definitely.
I mean, because hockey's an expensive sport, and you know, it's expensive to play it here. If your girl plays hockey, you know, you can imagine what it's like in other places. And at the same time, you know, I read an article not too long ago about the difference in the money that parents spend on their boys playing sports versus their girls playing sports is like an astronomical gap. Like, there's an enormous gap. Like,
well, I can tell you in Finland, I interviewed the guy who plays Chewbacca, the current guy, and he's a big Finnish guy. He's about 6'8", 6'9", and he was a basketball player. And I said, well, how come you didn't play hockey? You're talking about hockey. You like hockey players. He goes, it was too expensive. I couldn't afford to.
I knew Chewbacca would come up today.
It's funny. It came up a couple days ago, and you know, there was some social media criticism of the women's hockey tournament and the fact that, you know, it's gotten better over the last few years in terms of competitiveness, but still, it's Canada, U.S. and
no, it hasn't. Let's stop. That narrative is incorrect.
But if you can put another team on the ice of Americans, another team of Canadians that are still way better than everybody else.
Right. But like Rosie DiMano, who's a columnist for the Toronto Star, is saying this shouldn't be an Olympic sport because it's only two teams. And you know, she didn't get as much criticism because she's a woman. And you know, if a male writer wrote that, then he'd be.
Oh, I did. I saw a lot of criticism, Mike.
Lee Elliott wrote something about it too.
She got a lot. She got a lot of criticism. From women too.
Sport. And you know, you got to remember, and it's true that it took, if you go back at the turn of the century, but you know, there was a different world then. It did take 30 years for the Olympic men's competition to be more than two teams.
Yeah.
I think it was Great Britain and Canada, as I recall.
Yeah.
So they, it does take some time.
I mean, the one that makes no sense is Russia. They have their own league. There's terrific athletes in Russia, and yet they still haven't been able to produce it. And their own league's been going on, I want to say, at least 4 or 5 years now, and they have not. Kev, they still haven't been able to get over the hump here. And you would think, with all the resources that they could put into it, it would happen for them, and it hasn't. And they knew their team was bad before they left. Like, that's just weird.
Yeah, and they didn't. I remember at one point their budget for their entire program was like $20,000.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean,
it wasn't all that long ago.
but it's big now. I mean, they have a lot now.
The only gains that are being made, which are really small and not like significant, but the gains that are being made are the players from other countries who are playing college hockey in the U.S.
Yes,
and that's it. So that's still what has to happen. When you think about that's what has to happen. You have to go. If you're a college female hockey player, you have to go to the U.S., which not a lot of people from Europe necessarily want to do for college.
Well, there's a lot more Finns in U.S. college hockey system for men's hockey than you would think. There's a few Finns in there, yeah,
for sure. But it's like, if you're a woman, that's your only option. Like and it's like it's your only real option to play. I mean, I'm sure there's college hockey in Europe for women, but
not like this though. It's true.
Yeah, you're not going to get there anywhere from that. And if you're really good, you're going to come over here and
Well, I think they've got to. I mean, they've managed to narrow the scores a little bit. We have fewer 9-0, and it's like 5-1 and 6-1. But they're not competitive. Like Finland's not going to beat Canada or the U.S.
I feel like Canada and the U.S. are making that.
And in my mind, Sweden has gone backwards.
They have gone backwards. They got close, right? They won a couple of years ago. What did they win, a world championship or something? I remember where they came in second.
They came in second.
They came in second, yeah. And so, that was when they were close, and now they've slipped. So you're right.
And then there was that thing that in the World Championships, right, where Finland thought they won. Remember that? Wasn't that recently? Wasn't it Finland who scored the goal in overtime against the U.S. and it was called?
Oh, yeah. And they did and then they reviewed it. Yes, they were showing video of that. Yes,
and had they won the World Championships, it would have been way better, for everybody.
Yeah, and then they ended up losing that game.
Yeah, they scored, the goals called back, and then the U.S. scores and wins. So
yes,
that's another big shot in the dark, right? All right, let's get on to some hockey rumors.
Yeah, let me start with this because we've been talking about Giroux. He met with the media today, and sorry.
No, go ahead. Continue.
He met with the media today, and I'm quoting him here from Elliot Friedman. I haven't talked to Chuck, meaning Chuck Fletcher, yet about the trade deadline. Right now, I'm committed to this team. Yeah. He made it very clear the organization is very important to him. It's been an honor to be a Flyer for this long. Apparently, he's 12 games away from 1,000,
right?
Which would bring him to around the middle of March, right before the deadline.
The 18th. It'll happen on the 18th.
Right. And because he's got the $8.25 million salary, the closer you get to the deadline, the less of the cap hit, even if you retain 50%, it will be. So I think if a Giroux deal does happen, it's probably going to happen 4 days before the deadline. Friedman also said that the team to watch regarding Giroux is not the Colorado Avalanche, which we've talked about, but is the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, I read about this today.
Okay.
And
this is my article today.
The one thing I'll say, Eck, before you do the Panthers, we did talk about this yesterday. Giroux, the game would be on the 18th. The Flyers game is on the 19th. That's when he'd get his stick, and he'd be traded on the 21st. Like, that's just the way it's going to happen.
Yeah. I think Giroux wants to go to Colorado.
I do too.
That's what
I do too. That's what I think too.
Minnesota is possible, actually, but I think Colorado or Minnesota.
I think Giroux wants to go to Colorado.
I think he does.
I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Kevin feels pretty good about that. That's interesting. I don't think Florida wants anything to do with him, and I think it's what's interesting about that is that I'm not saying wants anything to do with him. Of course, he's Claude Giroux, but Florida scores plenty of goals. Like they don't need to go.
They're strong up the middle too.
They need if they're going to add, they're going to look at Chikrin or Sherratt or something like that. That's where they can solidify themselves. They don't need, and I think what's fascinating to me is, first of all, I will say this, that Bill Zito is a little bit, and people will learn this over time, I think. we're gonna have him on the show soon. We were gonna have him on last week, but he ended up getting called out. But you'll find this out that he's a little bit of Lou Lamoriello in him, that he does not talk to anybody, even people within his own organization, about what's happening. So when you start hearing Florida things come on, I mean, he was trained by Lou. Lou gave him a lot of training, trust me on this.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be one. There's not going to be rumors that are coming out about Florida Panthers that are necessarily going to be something that we catch ahead of time. Like if you've noticed so far, none of these, he's made a lot of trades. We haven't been seeing them ahead of time.
No, I've never heard, even just like being around the rink, hey, Zito likes this or this. I've never heard any of that.
It's not that way. And I think that, but I do think because he has made so many trades and because he's been aggressive and because he's like people think of him as like the big new GM that makes a lot of trades right now, you're going to see him keep being thrown into these rumors. Like you're going to see this happen. And I don't really think, nothing against Freeman, but I don't think there's really much to it. It could be even the case of maybe the Flyers want to put Florida and want to make it look like Florida's involved. I just don't.
Based on the report that we got earlier in the week from Adrian Dater of a couple prospects that Colorado would be shipping to Philadelphia for Giroux, I said to Russ, as soon as I heard that report, and Russ basically, he agreed. It's not enough. It's not close to being enough, especially if you look at it through the prism of the Toffoli deal, where they get a first-round pick and a decent prospect.
Yeah.
Giroux is a much better player than Toffoli.
Yes.
I know that he's making double the money, but that can be mitigated by a third team being mixed in, or them
or even just half the money.
So, yeah.
To me,
it's going to be a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and two prospects.
Right. That's more reasonable.
And one of those prospects should be a top 5 prospect. You may not get number 1, you may not get a number 2, but it should be a top 5 prospect. It should be.
Yeah, I don't think it will be, but
wow.
We'll see.
And that's and that in and of itself is going to disappoint Flyers fans. I have to just say
it's the $8 million salary.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. You never trade a player like Giroux and not
reasonably priced, they'd get more.
Yeah,
right.
The two prospects that were named were Sample Ranta and Barron. Justin Barron. And Barron's a former first-round pick. I don't know. Would you consider either one of those, Russ, top 5 in the Avs organization? I don't.
I think it's just outside. I think if I did it in my head, I think Barron's probably like 6.
Yeah,
Barron's got talent.
Yeah, Martin Kaut would be in the top 5.
Yeah.
I mean, and I do believe Giroux at his word too that he hasn't talked to them about this yet.
Yeah.
But I'm sure his agent has that. That's how you get out of that.
Yeah, I know. But I also think that there is a little bit of like I said before, a little bit of Joe Thornton in Giroux. In terms of the fact that I think that he would be okay not being traded too. Like I think I do think that's in him more.
Sure, but then he's not going to re-sign with him because, like Kevin said, it's nearly impossible to get him to re-sign with the cap issues they're going to have, even dumping salary.
Claude,
I think if he had his druthers, he would stay in Philadelphia.
I think
he would.
I think he would actually give him a pretty big discount to do it.
Hey, I was gonna say, hey Claude, okay, you want to stay in Philadelphia? Here, sign a 2-year, $4 million AAV. There you go.
He's not going to do that.
It wouldn't be smart. And Philadelphia, okay, in the state that they are in right now, they cannot not trade Giroux, Ristolainen, probably Braun. You're not going to make the playoffs. These guys, if you get a deal for Ristolainen and you get an extension, fine, then you don't trade them. But anybody who's not nailed down, you trade them.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell Braun wants to get traded. He's actually playing his best hockey.
He is. I know.
Last 2 or 3 games, he wants to get traded.
He will get traded. He's a valuable player.
Yeah, one of the things that was brought up to me just in terms of if you're looking at attractive teams for it's impossible to determine who's the favorite to win the cup. Like in the old days, you'd want to go to wherever you had the best chance to win a cup, but you don't know who that is anymore. So now you look at it like teams where you have a chance to really kind of show what you can do, and they do have a chance to win the cup. And as one guy said to me, who's better right now in that regard than Colorado? A very dynamic team with a lot of great players, has a chance to win the cup. and it's just a great place to go.
Kev, don't you believe like Sakic is behind the Giroux thing and probably wants to get him on a contract after this?
Probably, but he'll have to. He would he would have to take a discount as well.
Yeah.
But I as a replacement, I think it was you that brought it up, and I think you're probably right on this. That they see him as a replacement possibility for Kadri.
Yeah.
So
there's going to be really expensive.
No, go ahead.
Other rumors that I was going through today. So we'll talk about Marc-Andre Fleury and the new rumors that are out there, which are just baffling to me. But,
Kelly McCrimmon came out yesterday and basically shot them down. And I don't know if it would even be feasible on the cap. Because
we didn't say what they were yet, but they were. The idea of it was the Marc-Andre Fleury returning is the rumor that's out there. And that is, it doesn't. Obviously, McCrimmon's going to shoot them for sure.
Yeah, they missed on that one.
Yeah, I don't know why that's.
Yeah, I don't.
That was a big swing and a miss.
I don't get that one at all.
That was like Dave Kingman.
I do think that the interesting thing is you wrote a great article about Kemper this week, Kevin. His play has gotten better, and that I think increases the chances of Giroux to Colorado in some ways.
Yep, I think you're right there. I think they're very comfortable with Kemper now. And maybe they were before, like we were all trying to read too much into it. But, I think he's played so well, recently. And, it's been over a month.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say this. Everybody's probably right. The only thing now between February 16th and March the 21st that can change is if either Kemper or Pavel Francouz gets hurt.
Sure.
And then,
that's true of 30.
Agreed. But with Francouz and with Kemper, it's a yearly thing. So it's like once the deadline passes, and like I said, maybe they'll go for a third string goaltender who has some experience, so they don't run into a Michael Hutchinson situation. But I'm just saying, Kemper's played really well in the last month or so. Francouz has come back from injury and he's played good. If they're going to bolster up front or if they're going to add a defenseman or something like that, that makes complete sense. But the only thing that could change that is if one of their goalies gets hurt, then that may change their focus.
Right.
The funny thing about all that is, though, like if you looked at it, what I think they need most, like I'd go after Sherratt. Like they're scoring over 4 goals a game. They really don't need more offense.
Yeah. Really in the same market with Fleury.
I think he's doing it for the face-off angle of it, Kev, because Giroux is one of the best face-off guys in the league.
Yeah,
and I think that's really what they're looking at it for, more than scoring.
No doubt about it. And it's, as someone brought up to me today, it's always harder to score in the playoffs than it is the regular season, which we all know.
And he can play wing and center.
They've got Jack Johnson playing minutes in Colorado, like Sherratt over Jack Johnson.
I mean, you could get a lot of defensemen at the deadline that are better than Jack Johnson, though.
I mean, maybe that's what they're thinking. But the thing about Sherratt is that makes him so attractive is, with most of these guys, you got to launder them, through another team with the hope of getting down. With Sherratt, you may not even have to do that. Half of his salary, if Montreal retains, is what, $175. So
he just has to be healthy,
right?
Yeah, but he will be. He's only going to be out a week.
To go along with that, Pierre LeBrun reported. He said keep an eye on the Rangers and the Habs in terms of a deal between now and the deadline. According to him, he says that Jeff Gordon, and obviously because Gordon probably drafted most of these prospects, covets some of the Rangers' prospects. Now, Russ,
no doubt.
I'm assuming Kravtsov. I'm assuming Lundqvist. I'm assuming
I could see Kravtsov and Lundqvist being in the discussion with Sherratt, and maybe even something else coming back from Montreal, like a pick or something, because they've got 1 million picks. I could see Gordon pulling that off. That's where I felt like Sherratt was going the whole time, or at least that's what the Rangers are after. But I also think they're heavy into Hurdle too.
Well, according to Eklund, HockeyBuzz.com,
I think they really want Eklund. Or
Kelly Eklund's retired.
No,
I just want to say that.
Sorry for throwing you off, Kevin. You were talking about Sherratt and the Rangers.
Yeah, I'm talking about who's the
Hurdle
defenseman?
Nils Lundqvist.
Nils Lundqvist. Eklund, Kelly Eklund. Lundqvist. Montreal, I hear, really wants Lundqvist.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So no, according to me, I for what it's worth,
He doesn't know what he's talking about.
I just like saying there's a lot of according to other people today. And I do have a couple rumors because I spent a lot of time trying to chase down rumors today and yesterday. So the Rangers are very in on Chychrun. Actually, that's one of the names that they're looking at.
Well, they put an offer in, right? But have they done anything since? That's the question.
Yeah, they have apparently.
Okay.
And they are not alone on in Chychrun. Of course, Florida also talked about Chychrun to them, but Florida I think has moved on to another direction. The Bruins with Chychrun is another one. We all say that Chychrun shouldn't be traded, and we all agree with that. There's no reason that you would trade him, but needless to say, these discussions have taken place from what I've been told, and very clearly believe it to be the case. Because
it won't hurt attendance if Chychrun gets traded. We know that.
He's a source at the NHL who was very connected with that stuff and told me this stuff. So yeah, I think that's extremely possible. Sherratt is. It's funny how his stock has gone up and down when I hear people talk about him. Like there are times when people think when it first was, when Montreal was coming out of last year, out of having their great run, everybody was like, "Oh, Sherratt will be a great name at the trade deadline." It's definitely come down a lot.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so? I do. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I think it's situational when it comes to Sherratt. With certain teams, he's a fit, and with certain teams, he's not a fit. With the Rangers, I think they're looking for a guy who can play left defense. He played with Trouba before, so that might be a good fit. I know that Toronto had expressed some interest in him because he's a left shot, but he can play left and right side. What Kevin said about Colorado makes a lot of sense. I think probably most of the contenders out there would be interested in Sherratt. It's just right now, Montreal is looking for a first-round pick as part of that deal. And that's the question, what the market is going to be for these rental defensemen. Right now, everybody, I know that Friedman, I know that LeBrun, I know you said it, it's going to be a first-round pick plus for some of these guys. And I don't know whether the price goes down. If a team jumps at Sherratt right now, which a lot of the rumors are as soon as he comes off the IR, he's going to get traded because they don't want to risk him getting hurt again. I mean, if they move early, that's going to set the market. Our team's going to be willing to give a 1 and a 3 or a 1 and a 4 for these rentals. I think like Philadelphia, they have to get a 1 and a 3 for Ristolainen just to make that deal make sense.
I'm telling you, and I said it before, and I said it again, that if Fletcher is going to still be the GM, they're going to re-sign him.
Well, and okay, I'm not arguing with that point, but the thing is, Ristolainen has something to say about that. And if they don't offer,
I don't think he minds being here. I think he likes it here, and I think
say they offer him something close to what Ellis is making, but not as much as Provorov. So you're talking 6 1/4, 6'3", 6'4". Okay, you're going to have 3 defensemen making over $6 million. That doesn't work for the Flyers. It really doesn't.
And the rest are UFAs. Like you literally,
No, I agree it doesn't necessarily work, but I think they will find a way to make it work.
Well, then they trade Sanheim is what they do.
They'll have to do something like that. And I don't think it's a good move. And I don't think that, Ristolainen's value is all that high.
I don't think they would trade Sanheim. Sorry. I think they would trade Lawton. Lawton's hot right now. You could get a lot of value for Scott Lawton.
Lawton's definitely.
If Sanheim's 1 year away from being a UFA, he's making over close to 4 or over 4?
Little over 4, I think.
Yeah, you can't have a 4 defenseman making as much as they have right now, and because Sanheim is going into his walk year and they can't afford.
I'm going to play Kevin Allen. You can, Mike. I mean, you can do whatever the hell you want, really.
You don't want to win.
You can.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Well, you can win. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning have 4 guys at almost $40 million, and they're doing fine. Last time I checked.
Yeah. Right.
But let me just bring up about the Flyers again. Just to remind everybody what I've been talking about.
Right.
They have 13 players under contract, and they have $68 million committed and an $81 million payroll, an $81 million salary cap if it's not going to go up. So if let's just say they give Ristolainen $6 million, they'd be at 74, and they had 14 players under contract. So they have $7 million to go, and they have to sign 9 players after that.
That works.
So
yeah, no, they have.
It would be very difficult for them to sign Ristolainen unless, now we've talked about this before. If they trade Konechny, if they could somehow figure out a way to dump Van Riemsdyk,
Right.
then they have a lot more flexibility.
Right.
Could they trade a first round draft pick and like Kevin Hayes? That's the other thing I've heard about too. I've heard his name mentioned. I know he's been hurt a lot this year, but
You can't afford to do that if you're the Flyers. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
even though the contract doesn't look great at the moment,
yeah,
they'll never be able to recover up the middle. I mean, who are you going to put? You can't. I mean, right now you have to put Morgan Frost on the third line center next year. You can't put him second.
With Giroux leaving and likely not being there next year, your 1-2 has got to be Couturier and Hayes.
Right. It has
and
to
then
be.
Lawton as your third line center, maybe? Or
Could be. I mean, it all depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's trading with 5 years left 4 years left on Kevin Hayes at $7 million. I don't see
is it a buyout possibility?
No, you can't do that yet either because you got to see how he comes back from the injuries. Yeah, I mean, he won't be the same. Like if they get 50 points a year out of him, it'll be okay. It won't be worth it, but it'll be okay.
Right.
But you can't buy him out if he could do that.
I agree. The other name out there that is starting to pick up some steam is JT Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to people about him. And what's kind of funny about him is that two of the teams are very much are two teams he's played for before, and I thought it was interesting that the Rangers and the Lightning have both had discussions about JT Miller, which I was, he obviously played for the Lightning for just a year and a half, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only way it would work for the Lightning, Kev, is if Vancouver retains 50%, then even at that, I don't
even
know.
then won't yet. Yeah, Brisebois has told people and other general managers that he's really not interested in any player with any salary.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
he doesn't. I mean, he said, "I'm not lying. I don't have any way to, to do it."
I could see Tampa Bay, because they know him. I could see them at the deadline or before the deadline talking trade with Vancouver, but not for JT Miller, but for a guy like Luke Shen, who they had on two cup winning teams.
Yeah.
He's making $750,000. They know him. He's a right hand shot. He fits in with them. That makes sense. I just don't know. I just don't see any way they can add anybody of financial.
What about bringing JT Miller back to New York, Russ?
I mean, look, it could work. I think they'd be much better off going after Hurdle, to be honest, because now Miller is more mature now, but he did struggle at times in New York and didn't love the media in New York, and maybe he could handle it better. But I think if you want to make this team a true cup contender, even though Miller does a lot of things, there's a lot more that Hurdle brings to the table than Miller that they could actually use. Because if you make them a scary offensive team with Shesterkin, which, by the way, last night, him getting hurt in overtime, getting run over, having to go out for concussion protocol, coming back just as the shootout started and winning the shootout, that's pretty good, man. I mean, he's like I said, he's having a year, right? And so they may try and ride that as far as they could do it. And I think Hurdle does more for them offensively than Miller. Now Miller may do everything else better, but I think they still need a little bit of an offensive boost from that other center position, that third line center, which could be Ryan Strome then at that point. So,
just to put the line in perspective on JT Miller. By the way, you're absolutely right on about the Rangers. I'm for sure that they're in on him.
Yeah.
I mean, they're talking about it. I mean, they want to. They're going to get a forward, but just to put the Lightning in perspective, they have zero cap space, absolutely zero.
Yeah.
In fact, they're $7 million over, but they got that covered with Seabrook, so they can't bring in another guy. I mean, they could bring a $3 million guy in, but there aren't those guys usually aren't out there on the long-term IR. They're usually 5 or more. And the only other guy, so they'd have to trade a straight-up guy. And this is what, if you look at Brisebois' interview with the media, he's pretty much said this. He'd have to trade a guy like Palat
or Killorn.
Or Killorn, who I believe has a no movement clause. Anyway, he'd have to trade one of those guys. And as he said, what good does that do me to trade one of the guys that I count on to get another guy that would probably just fill in for him? So
you want to stay on the Cups with those guys. Why would you do that?
So
I agree.
Anyway, I take him at his word. If he says he can't do it, So
I agree.
Well,
But the team I will say with JT Miller that I've heard the most of is Boston, and
that makes sense because they're weak up the middle. I mean, but the question is, are they a JT Miller away from making a run in the playoffs? And I say no because they're in a division.
Oh, I say no too, but I don't. Will they even if they get into an assets war? They don't have the assets the other teams that we're talking about too.
I mean, they'd be trading guys like guys who have been in the NHL already, like Frederick,
Vakanen, and
right.
But they've got some space to play with, which some teams don't have.
That's fair.
That's true.
But the Rangers have space too.
The Rangers have space. I mean, if it's JT Miller comes down to the range, I mean, the Rangers could be interested in, like you said, Hurdle could be coming there.
Yeah,
there's other names.
I just think Hurdle's the better fit.
I think
the higher ceiling fit.
I think JT Miller is basically a fallback for if they don't get Hurdle. But
that's what I think.
This is the reason why.
Really good debate. Who would you rather have? I'd rather have JT Miller, but
he's got another year, but that's the complicating factor.
Just to put the Rangers' advantage into perspective, and it's something that I mentioned in my notebook.
Yeah.
They have $7 million in available cap space.
Right.
The 6 teams that were ahead of them when I wrote this had a combined, all 6 teams, $2 million. So that is a major advantage.
That's an advantage.
They can be in on both Sherratt and JT Miller. They can be in on Sherratt or another defenseman, and anybody they want in terms of forwards, Pavelski. Any of those guys. So
now this is the reason I suggest to Eck that he gets a tent and pitches it outside of the Bell Center, because Kent Hughes had a press conference today, a couple days after the Toffoli deal, and he said, Sherratt, we're going to move Sherratt, and he said regarding Jeff Petrie, we're open to making a deal. It's just got to be the right fit. It's a clearinghouse. It is the publishers' clearinghouse of the NHL, the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, we all expect that. I mean, the Petrie will be a little harder though because of the term he's still got left and his age. That's the problem.
Yeah, no, you're right on, Russ. You're not moving a 33-year-old guy with 4 years left.
No,
not in this environment.
No,
so.
Yeah. They'd definitely have to retain a significant amount, and that's the thing. I don't think they want to retain anything because
Gordon's not big on the retention part.
Right.
That's how he stayed. That's how he kept the Rangers in really good cap shape all that time, and even now is because he didn't do too much of that. He did do the dead money for what's his face, the defenseman went to St. Louis, American defenseman. They bought him out.
Yeah. Anyway, I can't think.
Yeah, they did do that, but they didn't do much of anything else like that.
Right.
By the way, I was a little encouraged last night when I saw Toffoli play 12 minutes in that game only. He did get a goal. Mangiapane, who I think thought that was going to get screwed by the Toffoli by bringing Toffoli in, got an assist. By the way, he has 7 points in his last 5 games. Mangiapane.
How many assists does he have on the year?
He has 4 assists in the last 20 games.
I was also encouraged by that fantastic performance by the Buffalo Sabres last night. Who did they play? Excuse me. Yeah.
I do admit, Mike, that was very discouraging towards my hope. I'll be the first to admit that game was probably the low point for me of the Islanders season. After having just gone on and saying how I thought they could win 8 out of 10, and Washington could lose 8 out of 10.
Slow clap. There we go.
The Sabres, problem.
Refresh my mind on what your Mangiapane bet is. I've lost track of that.
Top 10 in the NHL in scoring.
Yeah,
really?
In goal scoring, he's number 13 right now.
No, points. You said points.
I don't know if I said
you
points.
You did say points,
Zach. Give me a break.
You said points.
Would you have taken goal scoring, Mike?
What's that?
If I had said goals, I know I said points. If I had said goal scoring, you would have taken that bet, right?
I probably would have, but
we would have. No, to be fair, we would have. But this was more of a slam dunk.
He's got 24 goals playing, and like I said, Kevin, I said them yesterday. Of the top 50 scorers, he has played on an average of like a minute and a half less than anybody else. Like he's 15 and a half minutes. Of the top 50 goal scorers.
What we didn't know is that Mangiapane is allergic to apples.
No, he's allergic. He's allergic to line mates apparently, because Calgary never plays him with anybody, so the assists are like the way they are. And now with Toffoli,
He has to play with somebody if he's got 24 goals, Zach.
You got to watch the way this guy scores goals.
I do. I've watched Mangiapane. He's good, but I mean,
last night, like I thought Toffoli would jump up onto that second line, and then I was being told Mangiapane would be put on the third line as a 24 goal scorer, which I thought was pretty crazy. Because he could get 40 this year. Like he could score 40 goals.
Yeah. He's not scoring 40.
Yeah, I've got him on my team and my fantasy team because I liked him too at the start of the year, but he's not getting 40.
No.
We'd be remiss before the end of the show if we didn't mention Sidney Crosby scoring goal number 5 last night
against the Flyers. Of course, we knew that. I tweeted. I got some heat because I tweeted before the game started how long before Crosby scores his 500th goal, and I got like a tweet back. You're mean, and I'm like, listen, we're all thinking it, and sure enough, he gets it in the first period. Like he got it out of the way. The funniest
moment to me was watching ESPN Sports. I don't know if anybody else saw this. I wish I could have gotten it on tape. But I'm sitting there, and then Jody picked it up, not even me. So he scored his 500th goal against the Flyers, and he scored his 500th goal again in the NHL. It's his 50th goal against the Flyers. And the guy on ESPN said that works out to roughly 12% of his goals have been scored against the Flyers. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, 50 of 500 is pretty easy to figure out.
It is.
That's directly 10%.
That's funny.
So to say roughly 12% was like a crazy thing for them to say on ESPN. I'm like, what? Listening to this, I'm like, what the heck did they just say?
But what was more astounding than that? The list of Mario Lemieux's 50 goals against other teams. I think it was 6 or 7 other teams that Lemieux has done it.
Yeah. Well, Lemieux, yeah. I mean, it's hard.
It's crazy.
I think Toronto was one of them. Like 6
games. The thing that was really kind of heartwarming about the 500th goal last night is the reaction that his team gave him, which was like, obviously Crosby is a great player. He's a superstar, but you saw from what the reaction that he got that he's not a jerk. Like they obviously this guy is beloved by them.
He is.
Oh yeah.
And I think Giroux got the puck for him.
He did.
Giroux is the one who retrieved the puck. So
he did, and that
Giroux and him are buddies. I mean,
they are
really good buddies, and that's where I think that's where Giroux could end up next year. But
he could sign there next year.
But I think that I really do think that it was great to see not the reaction from everybody on the ice. Sullivan clapping, the whole bench, and then after the bench empties out to cheer on Crosby, and then empties out again to get around Crosby on the bench once Crosby sits down. When they announce his 500th goal, it's just like there's a guy who's like absolutely earned the respect and love of his teammates.
Yeah, and you know what? He was publicly happier than I've seen him in a while because even when the period ended, he still had this massive smile on his face. Like he usually doesn't do that.
He's so reserved. Usually.
He is.
And I think so aware of not wanting to be not wanting to come off bad. He's never come off badly at all. He's been completely.
Well, he's such a serious guy. I mean, that's the thing that I have noted since I went and interviewed him when he was 17.
Yeah,
and it was true then, and it's true now. He's very serious about his hockey. And
did you go to Rimouski, Kev?
I did. I went
to
Rimouski, and awesome. I still remember the quote. The quote that was the lead quote of my story was, and they asked him how hard it was basically to be Sidney Crosby, where it was like the Beatles. Every junior rink he'd go to, people were lined up to get autographs. He said, the hardest thing for me is to balance between making sure that I serve the game by, signing autographs and not holding up my teammates and making it worse on them. Like, who thinks about that when they're 16 years old?
Yeah.
It's so funny you
He's
say
such
that,
6 years. So serious.
I went to his first game as in the NHL, and I went out there, and it was in Pittsburgh, and I'm at that game, and he were you? I don't know if you were at that game or not. But I'm at this first game in the NHL. It's against the Flyers. It's in Pittsburgh. And after the game, we go to his stall to interview him. He's there. He's taking his stuff off, and he's like, he literally took control of the scrum at a young age, more than any I've ever seen. Like just completely. He basically said, "Guys, I'll talk to you in a second. Just give me 1 second." He took off all his stuff. He was like, "Just hold on 1 second. I'll be." Very mature. I'll answer all your questions, but give me a second while I take all my stuff off. And just completely, like, a lot of kids that age just don't have that kind of control over a room.
I give you one more. So Nathan McKinnon, right? I went to see him. I didn't see him in Halifax. It may have been in Val d'Or or one of those places. And I had a one-on-one with Nathan McKinnon after the game, and he wins the game. And when he scores the goal, like the whole place throws bottles onto the ice, beer bottles, soda bottles, everything. You know, this kid's 17, and I ask him about that. I'm like, does this happen all the time? Like this, and he goes, "Yeah, it's kind of like a regular occurrence." Like he wasn't even fazed. Everybody throwing litter on the ice after the away team won. So it was funny.
No, he's
There are four games tonight, and I would think that the highlight of it, although the Panthers, Hurricanes, and Winnipeg, Minnesota are pretty good games, Kev. But we got Jack Eichel returning against the Avalanche on TNT tonight, and I think everybody will watch at least the first period of that before they switch over to Canada, US.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's a really big game. And, you know, there's so many people that have an opinion about what Vegas did to get him into the lineup. So people will do that. I wanted to bring up, I wrote about this too, and I just did a quiz with the general manager about this, and he didn't get it right when I said to him, who's leading the NHL? I don't know if he is today, but he was last week when I wrote this. Who's leading the NHL in even strength points? And of course, he said Ovechkin and Draisaitl, and he was wrong. It's Johnny Gaudreau. And you talk about a guy having an unbelievable season.
Wow. Yeah.
It is Johnny Gaudreau leading the NHL, or was leading the NHL last Thursday in even strength points.
That's something. That's impressive. He's been so.
It's got to be hard for Calgary to sign him, though. It is.
Yeah, they've let this. They've gone too long. I don't know why.
They've gone too long.
I've said before that is the Flyers' top target, and I don't know how they'll do it, Kevin, because like you've clearly described, they're going to have to trade some serious things out to make that happen. But
I mean, he'll make $9.5 million, something like that, Eck. I mean,
I know,
and
I don't even know if the Flyers should do it. I don't even think they should do it. But I think that
the two biggest free agent targets in July are going to be Gaudreau if they make it to market, or Gaudreau and Nazem Kadri.
Yeah.
And
no
I think anybody who pays good money for Gaudreau, I think, depending on the length of the deal, that'll be fine. And anybody who pays, gives a deal to Nazem Kadri, you will regret it.
I think the Devils will go heavy after Gaudreau. That's what I think.
I do too. But anyway, that's all the time we have, folks. That was so much fun as always. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow about the U.S.-Canada women's game and, of course, Jack Eichel's return.